Gentlemen, let's talk about something vital, something that shapes not only our relationships, but also the very way we see and treat the incredible women in our lives. Today we discuss 9 things a man should never do with a woman. Why? Because these things undermine trust, respect, and love. 3 elements that should be the foundation of every relationship. Number 1, never disrespect her autonomy. A woman is not an extension of you. She's her own person. Her thoughts, her dreams, her ambitions, they matter just as much as yours. You don't get to control her decisions. Respect her choices. That's how you build trust. Number 2, never objectify her. This is a big one. A woman is not a body. She's not an accessory. She's a person with a mind, heart, and soul. When you look at her, see her for who she truly is, not just what she looks like. Recognize her depth. Appreciate her strength. Value her intellect. Number 3, never manipulate her. Some men think they can win her over by guilt tripping or using emotional manipulation. That's not how you build a lasting connection. Be honest, be real. Anything less will destroy the very foundation of your relationship. Number 4, never ignore her needs. When a woman shares her needs, emotional, mental, or physical, listen, truly listen. Too many men make the mistake of thinking that a relationship is one-sided or that the woman should always just understand them. It's a partnership. Listen, respond, nurture. Number 5, never cross her boundaries. Every person has boundaries. Respect hers. This is not just about physical boundaries, it's emotional and psychological as well. When you disrespect her boundaries, you disrespect her person. Boundaries are sacred. Honor them. Number 6, never take her for granted. You've got to appreciate her every single day. You don't just expect her to be there for you. You don't just assume she's going to handle everything in the relationship. Appreciate her sacrifices. Acknowledge her efforts. Show gratitude. It means everything. Gentlemen, when you understand these principles, when you live by them, you start creating something powerful. A relationship based on respect, trust, and love. And that's the foundation of greatness. It's the foundation of success, and it's what truly changes lives. So let's promise today to never forget the importance of respect, autonomy, and appreciation. Let's promise to be the kind of men who build women up, who empower them, who stand by them as equals, the kind of men who bring out the best in every person they meet. Gentlemen, let's be crystal clear. A woman's autonomy is non-negotiable. Her ability to make her own decisions, define her own path, and shape her own future is something that deserves the highest level of respect. This isn't just about granting her space. It's about recognizing that she is a fully capable, independent individual, just as much as you are. Autonomy is the core of anyone's self-worth. When you attempt to control or dictate the choices of the woman in your life, you're not just overstepping boundaries, you're sending a message that her voice doesn't matter. You're telling her that her decisions, thoughts, and desires aren't worthy of being heard or respected. This is a toxic path that leads to resentment, frustration, and a breakdown in the relationship. Let's consider the impact of this kind of behavior. When a man disregards a woman's autonomy, he takes away her power to choose. He takes away her agency. He begins to see her as an object that serves his needs rather than an equal who has her own life, her own dreams, and her own identity. But every human being is entitled to self-determination. Every person deserves the right to choose their own future and make decisions that align with their values, beliefs, and aspirations. When a man tries to control a woman's decisions, whether it's about her career, her friendships, her hobbies, or how she chooses to spend her time, he is undermining the very essence of her personhood. A relationship built on control is not a partnership, it's a prison. Now, don't mistake this for the idea that relationships are about isolation or independence to the point of disconnection. Being in a relationship means supporting each other, not stifling each other. But there's a difference between support and domination. It's one thing to offer advice or share your perspective when asked, but it's a whole other thing to impose your will upon her. Autonomy means freedom. It means that the woman in your life should never feel like she's living under your thumb, constantly second-guessing her decisions to avoid conflict or disapproval. Why does this matter so much? Because when you take away her autonomy, you take away the very thing that makes a relationship equal and healthy. Mutual respect is built on the foundation of independence. Each partner must be able to function as an individual with their own passions, ambitions, and choices. The relationship isn't about transforming one person into an extension of the other. It's about two complete individuals coming together, learning from each other, growing together, and supporting each other's individual journeys. Let's talk about decision-making for a second. How often do you find yourself in a position where you believe you know what's best for her? It could be about something as small as the way she dresses, or as big as career moves or major life choices. But here's the truth. No one knows another person's life better than they do themselves. She has her own set of experiences, values, and priorities. And while you may have the best intentions, it is her decision to make. Even in the most loving relationships, the temptation to save or fix someone can be strong. But remember, no one needs to be saved unless they asked for help. It's not your job to guide her life for her, to decide who she should be or how she should act. Your role is to support her unconditionally and without expectation so she can make her own decisions with confidence. True respect for her autonomy also means recognizing her right to change. We all evolve over time. The woman you're with today might not be the same person she was a year ago, and she might not be the same person a year from now. Growth is essential for both of you, and it should be embraced. When you respect her autonomy, you're not only allowing her the space to grow, but you're also giving yourself permission to grow as well. A relationship that stifles growth is a stagnant one, and no one thrives in stagnation. And let's be honest, it's incredibly empowering when a man supports a woman's autonomy, when a woman feels seen for who she truly is, when she knows her partner trusts her to make the right decisions for herself, she flourishes. Confidence builds, trust builds. And what follows is a deeper, more profound connection. You're no longer her keeper, you're her partner, her teammate. You've created an environment where both of you can thrive. Respecting her autonomy doesn't mean you have to agree with every choice she makes. It means that you honor her right to make those choices. It means you acknowledge that her life is hers to live. And your role is not to control or manipulate, but to walk alongside her, supporting her when needed, and trusting her judgment. When you respect her autonomy, you empower her. And in doing so, you empower your relationship, because a partnership rooted in mutual respect and trust is one that can withstand the tests of time. Gentlemen, we need to have an honest conversation about the dangers of objectification. Objectification is the act of reducing someone, particularly a woman, to an object. Something to be used, admired, or consumed. It strips away their humanity and their individuality, turning them into nothing more than a means to fulfill someone else's desires. This is one of the most damaging behaviors a man can exhibit in any relationship. When you objectify a woman, you cease to see her as a whole person. You stop recognizing her as someone with unique thoughts, emotions, goals, and struggles. You begin to focus on one-dimensional aspects of her, usually her physical appearance, and lose sight of her deeper qualities. You become blinded by superficial aspects and forget that the woman in your life has a history, a future, and a mind of her own. This is not just about avoiding inappropriate behavior or comments. Objectification starts with your mindset. It's about how you see her when she walks into the room, how you talk about her behind her back, and how you regard her worth. The moment you reduce her to a physical form, you fail to honor her entire being. And over time, that failure erodes trust and mutual respect. We live in a society where women are often portrayed through a lens that focuses only on their look. Magazines, social media, advertising, these all constantly bombard us with images of women that prioritize beauty above all else. While there's nothing wrong with appreciating a woman's appearance, it becomes dangerous when it's the only thing you value in her. This is where objectification begins. When you objectify a woman, you see her as something to be admired, but not You may find yourself focusing on her external beauty, her curves, or the way she dresses, but what about the way she thinks, the way she dreams, the things that scare her, the things she's passionate about? Objectification reduces her to an image, but not a human being. This dynamic can play out in a number of harmful ways. It can lead to unrealistic expectations, both for her and for yourself. When you objectify her, you might start to expect that she exists to look a certain way, to behave a certain way, or to satisfy your personal desires. You may push her to conform to these narrow expectations, disregarding her comfort, her individuality, and her freedom to express herself authentically. This is a form of control masked as desire, and it's toxic. What happens when you consistently objectify a woman? You limit her agency. Instead of allowing her to be fully realized, you trap her in a box of your own making. You prevent her from being her true self. Instead of being the person she was born to be, someone with her own strengths, weaknesses, ideas, and flaws, you create a version of her in your mind that is bound to a set of standards that have little to do with who she truly is. Objectification also damages the relationship. If you reduce a woman to her looks or any other physical attribute, you are sending a clear message. Her value is conditional. It's based on how she fits into your ideal of what a woman should be. This fosters a shallow, insecure relationship where both of you are constantly trying to live up to an unrealistic, superficial standard. But let's get deeper. Objectification isn't just about how you perceive her. It's also about how it affects her sense of self-worth. When a woman feels objectified, she starts to doubt her own value beyond her appearance. She wonders whether you care about her mind, her heart, her ambitions, or whether you only care about how she looks when she walks into the room. She may feel as though she's only worthy of love or attention if she fits your perception of beauty, and this can wreak havoc on her self-esteem. Furthermore, objectification leads to an unhealthy dynamic in the relationship. It encourages a one-sided connection where the woman feels like she's constantly performing to meet your desires and expectations, but never truly seen for who she is as a whole person. It turns love and connection into a transactional experience where she feels like she's being used rather than loved. This is a dangerous and isolating path for both partners. On a broader scale, objectification perpetuates harmful gender stereotypes. When men objectify women, they reinforce the idea that a woman's worth is defined by her external qualities alone. It perpetuates the notion that a woman's value is only tied to her looks, and by doing so, it encourages a culture of inequality. This mindset feeds into a cycle of objectification that affects women of all ages and backgrounds. It influences how women are treated at work, how they are represented in media, and how they navigate everyday life. The consequences extend far beyond the confines of any single relationship. So how do we combat this? How do we stop objectifying the women in our lives? The first step is to see her as a whole person. Acknowledge her as someone with hopes, fears, dreams, and ambitions, just as complex and worthy as you are. Appreciate the depth she brings to the relationship, not just the surface level features. Ask her about her day. Listen to her ideas. Support her dreams. When you begin to see her as the multidimensional person she is, objectification has no place in your life. Understanding that a woman is more than her appearance is a vital shift for any man who wants to build a meaningful, healthy relationship. It's about respect. It's about valuing her not for how she looks, but for who she is. And when you make that shift, you create a relationship built on a deeper, more genuine connection, one that goes beyond the superficial and celebrates her as the complete individual she truly is. Gentlemen, let's get straight to the heart of one of the most damaging behaviors in a relationship, manipulation. Manipulation is a form of control disguised as concern, affection, or love. It's a toxic behavior that undermines trust, creates unhealthy power dynamics, and erodes the foundation of any relationship. The moment manipulation enters the equation, it distorts what should be an equal partnership into something manipulative and deceptive. Manipulation is subtle. It doesn't always appear as an outright demand or an aggressive confrontation. It can show up as guilt tripping, playing on emotions, or using silence and withdrawal as a form of punishment. But make no mistake, manipulation is about power. It's about someone trying to shape another person's thoughts, actions, or emotions for their own benefit, often without regard for that person's well-being or desires. At the core of manipulation is the idea that one person should control the decisions of the other. When a man manipulates a woman, he's essentially telling her that her decisions don't matter, that he knows what's best for her, and that she should conform to his expectations, desires, or needs, regardless of her own. The truth is, no one has the right to control someone else's thoughts, feelings, or actions through deceit or emotional pressure. Guilt manipulation is one of the most common tactics. Have you ever heard someone say, if you really loved me, you'd do this for me? Or maybe, I've done so much for you and this is how you repay me? These kinds of statements are designed to make the other person feel responsible for the emotions or happiness of the manipulator. It shifts the focus from the needs of the woman to the needs of the man, making her feel as though her actions or decisions are somehow wrong or selfish if they don't align with what he wants. This creates a heavy emotional burden, leaving her feeling obligated to comply to maintain peace or avoid guilt. Another form of manipulation is gaslighting, making her question her perception of reality. This occurs when a man denies or downplays his own actions, often in an attempt to avoid responsibility. He may twist the facts or turn things around so that she starts doubting herself, wondering whether she's overreacting or misremembering events. Gaslighting is a powerful and damaging tactic that makes the victim feel confused, anxious, and disconnected from their own reality. It's designed to strip away her confidence and force her into a state of dependency where she begins to rely on his version of events rather than trusting her own instincts. Manipulation can also be more subtle, such as withholding affection or communication to create emotional distress. Have you ever experienced the silent treatment? This tactic is often used to punish or manipulate the other person into submission. By withdrawing love or attention, the manipulator hopes to force the victim to change their behavior to earn back the affection or approval. This tactic creates a volatile emotional environment where the woman feels she has to walk on eggshells, constantly wondering when the next withdrawal of affection will occur. The woman in this scenario is forced into an emotional state of insecurity, confusion, and fear where her behavior is constantly dictated by the mood of the manipulator. One of the most damaging aspects of manipulation is how it erodes trust. Trust is the bedrock of any successful relationship. But when manipulation is introduced, trust begins to crumble. A woman in this kind of relationship will start to feel unsure about her own decisions, question the motives behind the actions of her partner, and begin to feel alienated from her own sense of agency. Manipulation creates a power imbalance where one person is seen as the authority while the other is reduced to a subordinate figure who is at the mercy of the manipulator's whims. Now, it's important to understand that manipulation doesn't always happen consciously. Sometimes it's the result of learned behavior or unhealthy patterns from previous experiences. A man may not even realize that he's manipulating a woman if he's never been taught how to communicate openly and honestly. But that's where the responsibility lies. You need to be aware of the power dynamics in your relationship. If you're using tactics to get someone to do something against their will, or to make them feel responsible for your emotions, that's manipulation and it needs to stop. The reality is that real love is not about control. Real love is about mutual respect, transparency, and understanding. It's about creating a space where both partners can express themselves freely without fear of being coerced or manipulated into decisions that don't align with their own desires or values. If you truly care about someone, you will support them in making their own choices, even if those choices are different from what you want. You will not use guilt, emotional manipulation, or subtle tactics to make them bend to your will. Open communication is the key to breaking free from manipulation. If there's something you want, ask for it. If you disagree on something, have a respectful conversation about it. Don't try to get what you want through emotional pressure or subtle coercion. Respect her feelings, acknowledge her autonomy, and be willing to listen when she says no or when her decisions don't align with yours. When you eliminate manipulation from the equation, you open the door for authentic connection and understanding. True love is about lifting each other up, not about using tactics to pull the other person down. It's about empowering her to be the best version of herself and supporting her decisions, even when they don't always align with your own. When you stop manipulating and start respecting her choices and feelings, you create a relationship built on trust and mutual understanding. Gentlemen, let's take a moment to recognize one of the most fundamental aspects of any successful relationship, meeting each other's needs. This doesn't just mean the physical needs, though they are certainly important. It's about emotional, mental, and even spiritual needs, the things that nourish a woman's well-being and help her feel understood, valued, and supported. Ignoring or neglecting her needs doesn't just hurt her, it hurts the relationship itself, leading to distance, resentment, and unfulfilled potential. When a woman's needs are ignored, she starts to feel invisible. She begins to feel that her feelings don't matter, that her desires, dreams, and emotions are not being heard or understood. It's easy to take her presence for granted, especially in a long-term relationship where familiarity sets in. And she says in a recent article, by not showing up for what matters all the time, you're ignoring or neglecting your own needs. Take responsibility for your own. But when you start overlooking her needs, you start to create a gap. You become less attuned to her emotions, her desires, and her inner world. This gap over time will erode the connection you once shared. Let's talk about emotional needs for a moment. A woman needs to feel emotionally safe with her partner. She needs to know that when she opens up, when she shares her vulnerabilities or expresses her feelings, she will be met with empathy, understanding, and support, not judgment or indifference. When a man dismisses or invalidates her emotions, it creates a sense of emotional alienation. She begins to withdraw, to feel like she cannot fully express herself without fear of being dismissed or belittled. And so my goal here in this podcast is to help the inner man's audience with two simple truths. Number one, dating, restriction, or dismissal doesn't feel joyous. It feels belittled. Emotional neglect doesn't just lead to frustration. It leads to emotional loneliness. And when emotional loneliness sets in, it's only a matter of time before the connection between partners begins to fracture. Listening actively is one of the most powerful ways to meet her emotional needs. Active listening isn't just hearing her words. It's being fully present, engaging with what she's saying, and offering empathy. It's not just about fixing the problem. Sometimes a woman just needs to feel understood, not to be immediately rescued. By listening attentively, you show her that her thoughts and feelings matter. You allow her to be vulnerable without fear of judgment, and you create a space where her needs are acknowledged and valued. Next, let's move beyond the emotional realm and talk about mental and intellectual needs. Women, like men, crave intellectual stimulation. They seek conversations that challenge them, inspire them, and allow them to engage with new ideas and perspectives. When you ignore her intellectual needs, you undermine her sense of identity and value. She wants a partner who can engage her mind, who can discuss ideas, dreams, or even tackle complex issues together. Failing to meet these needs leaves her feeling unfulfilled and disconnected. It can also create a sense of stagnation in the relationship where the conversations become surface level or mundane, devoid of depth. Imagine this: when you constantly brush off her opinions, ignore her input, or dismiss her intellectual contributions, it tells her that her ideas are not important. It tells her that she is not valued for the richness of her mind, only for her physical presence. This kind of neglect is deeply harmful because it reinforces the idea that she is not a full person. She's just a companion, a role to be filled. Meeting her intellectual needs means engaging with her as a complete individual, one whose thoughts, creativity, and intelligence deserve the same respect and attention as your own. Physical needs are also crucial in a relationship. This is not just about intimacy or affection. It's about understanding the importance of physical touch, presence, and care. Everyone has a different love language, but for many women, physical touch, hugs, holding hands, a gentle touch on the arm, can be a powerful way of feeling loved and cared for. When you withhold physical affection, you may inadvertently send the message that you're not interested or that her presence is not enough to elicit tenderness from you. This doesn't mean that physical needs must always translate into sex, but the act of touching, connecting physically, and showing affection through small gestures can be a way of reinforcing love. A lack of physical affection, or worse, physical neglect, can leave a woman feeling rejected, unappreciated, and emotionally distant. These gestures are part of what builds intimacy in the relationship. Ignoring these needs, whether consciously or unconsciously, creates emotional and physical distance, eroding the connection over time. Let's also talk about her needs for validation and recognition. Everyone, no matter their gender, wants to feel seen and valued. Women are no exception. They need to know that their contributions to the relationship, their efforts, and their role are noticed and appreciated. Whether she's taking care of the home, managing her career, or supporting you through difficult times, she needs to know that you see her hard work. You may assume that she knows she's appreciated because you say thank you occasionally or because you do things for her in return, but small acknowledgments can go a long way. The absence of validation can lead to frustration and feelings of inadequacy. It's easy to fall into the trap of taking her efforts for granted, especially if you've been in a relationship for a while. But recognizing and affirming her contributions keeps the emotional climate of the relationship warm, ensuring she feels seen, loved, and valued. Without this recognition, a woman begins to feel invisible. She starts to wonder if her efforts matter, if her love is reciprocated, or if she's just another person in the background of your life. Finally, let's discuss her need for support in times of stress or difficulty. Life isn't always easy. Everyone goes through tough times. Whether it's personal struggles, professional challenges, or unexpected life changes, a woman needs to know that her partner is there to stand by her, not just in the good times, but in the challenging moments as well. Ignoring her needs for emotional support when she's struggling only deepens the divide between you and her. She might feel like she's carrying the weight of the world alone and that she can't rely on you for help when she needs it the most. A woman's needs are complex, and they require effort, understanding, and commitment to meet. Neglecting them doesn't just hurt her. It undermines the entire relationship. Meeting her needs is a sign of respect, love, and partnership. It's about showing her that she's valued, not just for the role she plays, but for the whole person she is. Gentlemen, in every healthy relationship, there are boundaries, unspoken or clearly defined lines that protect individual autonomy, emotional safety, and mutual respect. Boundaries are essential in fostering a dynamic where both partners feel safe, valued, and respected. Disrespecting a woman's boundaries is one of the most harmful things you can do in a relationship because it's not just about crossing lines. It's about dismissing her right to control her own space, her own decisions, and her own body. A boundary is not a barrier to love or intimacy. In fact, it's the opposite. Boundaries are the pillars of a relationship built on trust and respect. They allow both partners to show up as their true selves without fear of overstepping or being violated. A boundary is the act of being able to set those boundaries, and it takes care of all the other parts of your life, something most people don't realize, but it's bigger than you think it might be. When you disregard a woman's boundaries, you send a message that her comfort, her personal space, and her needs don't matter. This message undermines the very foundation of the relationship, creating resentment and mistrust. Let's break down what it means to respect a woman's boundaries and why it's so vital for the health of a relationship. Physical boundaries, physical space, and touch. Physical boundaries are deeply personal, and every individual has their own comfort levels with touch, proximity, and personal space. When a woman sets a boundary around her body, whether it's how close someone can get to her or how they touch her, it must be respected. Consent is the cornerstone of any healthy physical interaction, and ignoring her physical boundaries can be damaging in ways that go far beyond just the immediate violation. Physical boundaries can be subtle. Maybe she's not comfortable holding hands in public, or perhaps she doesn't want to engage in physical intimacy when she's not in the right mental or emotional space. These are not things to be taken lightly. Her comfort should always be prioritized. Pressuring or coercing a woman into physical intimacy or disregarding her hesitation or refusal is a violation of her autonomy and a clear indication that you're more interested in your own desires than in her well-being. If she says no, that should be the end of the conversation. Respecting her physical boundaries shows that you value her as an individual and that you care more about her comfort than about satisfying your own immediate wants. You could refer to it as reconciling or forcing her sexually or figuring out a means to force it out. Emotional boundaries next. Let's consider emotional boundaries. These are often harder to recognize because they involve the emotional and psychological aspects of the relationship. Everyone has emotional boundaries, which are limits on how much of their emotional self they're willing to share or how much they're willing to give in a relationship. Pushing someone to open up before they're ready, demanding more emotional investment than they're comfortable with, or pressuring them to share personal details they aren't prepared to disclose can all be violations of emotional boundaries. Emotional boundaries can also manifest in the form of respecting a woman's autonomy and decision-making. If she needs time to process emotions, respect her space and her need for silence or reflection. Don't push her to open up before she's ready. If she expresses something that makes her feel uncomfortable or vulnerable, honor that feeling without belittling it or telling her to get over it. Giving her the emotional space she needs to express herself on her own terms is a way to deepen your connection and foster trust. Emotional boundaries are not about distance. They're about creating a safe space for her to be herself and ensuring that you never pressure or manipulate her into revealing more than she's comfortable with. Social boundaries. Social boundaries are another aspect that should not be ignored. These refer to a person's need for space and control over their social interactions. A woman has the right to decide who she spends her time with, who she communicates with, and how much time she dedicates to socializing outside the relationship. You might find yourself wanting to spend more time with her, but it's important to recognize that she may also need time for herself or time to spend with her friends, family, or even her own personal pursuits. If she sets a boundary about how often she wants to communicate or spends time apart, it's crucial to respect that. Clinginess or demanding constant attention can be emotionally draining. Rather than feeling entitled to her time or energy, acknowledge that she is a whole person with needs outside the relationship. By respecting her social boundaries, you show her that you care about her independence and want her to thrive in all aspects of her life, not just the time spent with you. Professional boundaries should also be recognized and respected. Every woman has her own goals, career, ambitions, and sense of independence that are crucial to her sense of self-worth. If she sets boundaries around her work, whether it's about time, projects, or career choices, respect that as part of her autonomy. This means not pressuring her to prioritize the relationship over her career, not dismissing her professional goals, or making her feel guilty for focusing on her ambitions. A relationship thrives when both partners are able to pursue their personal goals without judgment or interference. When you respect her professional boundaries, you show her that you value her as an individual with dreams and ambitions that deserve respect. Respecting the boundary of time is an incredibly valuable resource. Respecting a woman's time is a form of honoring her. When she expresses the need for time alone, for self-care, or to focus on something important to her, don't make it about you. Don't demand more of her time than she can give. And don't make her feel guilty for needing time apart. Being understanding when she needs space, whether physical, emotional, or mental, demonstrates maturity and the ability to have a healthy relationship that doesn't rely on constant togetherness. If she sets a boundary of needing to focus on her studies, her career, or her family, respecting that boundary helps create an environment where she can be the best version of herself, and the relationship will flourish when both people feel fulfilled individually. Gentlemen, one of the most damaging things that can happen in a relationship is when a partner begins to take the other for granted. Taking someone for granted is a subtle form of neglect that slowly erodes the emotional foundation of a relationship. When you take a woman for granted, you start assuming that she will always be there, always be available, and always be willing to give without showing her the appreciation she deserves. It's not just about ignoring her efforts. It's about failing to recognize her worth and the energy she invests into the relationship. Taking time to take a minute to own on and express your efforts is a key way for the brain to see that you are Relationships thrive on appreciation. Gratitude and recognition are vital in keeping the emotional connection strong. When you fail to acknowledge the countless little and big things a woman does, you send the message that she's just part of the background, that her contributions aren't seen or valued. This neglect doesn't happen overnight, but rather as a gradual shift that can ultimately cause deep emotional pain and frustration. And here's the truth. When you take her for granted, you start losing her, not just physically, but emotionally and mentally as well. Let's start with emotional neglect. When you stop appreciating a woman for who she is, for her qualities, her actions, and her love, you begin to take her presence in your life as a given. You start to assume that she'll always be there to support you, always be there to listen, always be there to care for you. This assumption creates a dynamic of complacency where her emotional needs are ignored. You stop asking her how she's feeling, how her day went, or what's on her mind because you assume you already know. This leads to a disconnect. Emotional support becomes one-sided, and the bond weakens because it's not being nurtured. Gratitude is the antidote to taking her for granted. A simple thank you can go a long way in showing her that you appreciate her contributions, whether it's the everyday tasks she takes care of, the emotional labor she invests in the relationship, or the love she gives. Acknowledging her efforts shows that you see her for all that she is, but when this appreciation is absent, it creates a void where resentment can grow. She starts feeling unappreciated, invisible, and like her efforts don't matter, which only pushes her away over time. Next, let's talk about neglecting the small things. It's easy to get caught up in the routine of life and forget the importance of the little gestures that kept the relationship alive in the beginning, whether it's leaving a thoughtful note, sending a sweet message, or making time for a meaningful conversation. It's the small acts of kindness and attention that nurture a relationship. When you take her for granted, you stop doing these things. You assume she knows how you feel, and you stop putting in the effort to show her. The result is that she starts feeling like a convenience rather than a priority. Relationships are built on effort, and that effort should be ongoing. It's not enough to just show up. It's about continuing to invest in the relationship, to create moments of connection, and to show her that she matters beyond the role she plays in your life. When you neglect these small gestures, it feels like you're coasting, like you no longer care to put in the effort that makes her feel special. Over time, the lack of attention to the details creates a sense of emotional distance, and that distance becomes harder to close as time goes on. Now let's address the assumption of permanence. Taking someone for granted is often rooted in the assumption that a relationship is permanent, that the person will always be there. When you assume that someone will always be by your side, you stop valuing them the way you did when you first met. You stop trying to win her over. You stop seeing her as an individual with her own needs, desires, and dreams. You start seeing her as a given, someone who is just there, fulfilling a role. But relationships are dynamic, not static. Just because she's been there for you doesn't mean she will always be. If you don't show her that she's valuable, you risk taking her presence for granted until it's too late. Time and attention are priceless commodities. The more you invest in her and in the relationship, the more it grows. When you give her your time, when you put down the distractions and focus on her, she feels seen. This attention is one of the greatest gifts you can give to someone, especially in a world filled with distractions. When you don't give her your attention, you make her feel like she's not worth your time. She may start to wonder if you truly value her presence or if you're just going through the motions. Without meaningful engagement, the relationship starts to deteriorate. She may begin to question the future of the relationship as she feels less and less like a priority in your life. Finally, let's consider the long-term impact of taking her for granted. Over time, it chips away at her sense of self-worth and her emotional investment in the relationship. When a woman feels unappreciated, she starts to question her role in your life. She wonders if you truly care about her or if she's just someone filling a space. This lack of appreciation leads to frustration, emotional fatigue, and a sense of being taken advantage of. Eventually, this leads to the breakdown of communication and connection. She might stop expressing her feelings because she feels they won't matter. She might stop putting in the effort because she doesn't see the point if she's not being valued. Taking her for granted is the beginning of the end of a healthy relationship. It might not be noticeable at first, but over time, the lack of appreciation grows into something more serious, a breach of trust, a loss of connection, and the gradual fading of love. Respecting, and when you actively show her that you see her, that you appreciate her, and that you value her not just for what she gives, but for who she is, you foster a relationship that grows stronger with each passing day. Don't make the mistake of assuming she'll always be there without making her feel loved and cherished in return. Gentlemen, relationships are living, breathing entities that require constant care and attention. The act of taking a woman for granted undermines the very essence of what makes a partnership thrive. It's not just about grand gestures, but about showing appreciation for her daily presence, her contributions, and her unwavering support. Every moment you fail to acknowledge her, you risk creating distance, resentment, and emotional disconnection. Appreciation is not optional, it is a necessity. The small things matter, the thoughtful words, the acts of kindness, the time spent listening, and the energy put into making her feel seen and valued. When you stop taking her for granted, you breathe life into the relationship. You remind her that she is loved, cherished, and a priority in your life, not just a role to fill. In the end, a relationship thrives not because of what's assumed, but because of the continuous effort and care you invest into making your partner feel truly appreciated. Never forget, it's the consistent, heartfelt appreciation that keeps the connection strong. So never take her for granted. Every day is an opportunity to remind her how much she means to you, to nurture your bond, and to ensure that both of you feel loved, respected, and valued in the relationship.